Tonight, you've seen her in briefings from the White House.
We can have a huge impact if we unite together. This means, as in all places, they have to be following the presidential guidelines.
White House Coronavirus Task Force member Dr. Deborah Birx joins us to discuss the latest on the pandemic. Plus,
help is on the way.
The details of the coronavirus stimulus deal that was reached in the Senate and what it means for Americans. And a look at the new ways pastors are reaching people during this crisis. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The Senate strikes a deal. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder. Tonight, the country waits for Congress to pass a major coronavirus relief package. More on that in just a moment here. But first, all of this coming as the number of COVID-19 cases continues to go up, largely due to more testing we're seeing. As of tonight, more than 60,000 cases have been reported here at home. Just 3 weeks ago, only 70 confirmed cases. New York is the hardest hit state. Around half of all U.S. cases are there. The death toll reaching near 300 in New York, and the CDC confirming more than 700 deaths across the country. We are grateful to Dr. Deborah Birx, the response coordinator for the White House Coronavirus Task Force, for joining us. Dr. Birx, great to have you. You know, it's a question on everyone's mind. How long could this semi-quarantine go on for? What's your best guess from a medical perspective?
Well, that's a great question, and welcome to your audience from cold Washington at this moment. So we're looking very carefully at the information that has been coming from countries around the world, as well as our individual states and counties that are reporting. And integrating that data is what we do every day so that we can take that to the vice president and president for decision making. And that's really one of the key roles of the task force, is to be looking at all of our information and getting the best interpretation of that information to the president.
The faith community is very active within their local communities. Dr. Birx, what's your direct message to them during this pandemic?
Well, they're a critical part, and I've talked about often how the solutions to this epidemic will come through the community's engagement. And so last week I was privileged to have a call with several hundred faith leaders on this topic, because faith leaders are trusted within their communities. They're a critical information platform that goes out to all in their community. And it also provides that, even though we're socially distancing, prevents social isolation. So the faith community has a really critical role to play in community after community, both giving out accurate information and important information, but also ensuring that everyone in the household feels part and engaged in their community, even though they're in their homes themselves.
You know, Easter just around the corner. The president says he'd like to get the economy up and running again at that time. What do you say about Easter services? Is that too soon?
I think we're looking at the interesting thing about the United States, and the reason I'm pushing and push every day with all of our colleagues around all the agencies, the government, and our modelers, is the United States is a big country, and community by community is different, county by county is different. And so we are now looking at all of the information that comes in from testing sites, whether they're hospitals or drive-throughs, at the community level. And this will give us some real insight into where there is really almost no COVID virus, and those communities can really work on containment. What do I mean by that? When you find someone that's positive, you put them in quarantine, you contact trace. There are still counties that can do that. And then we have some large metro areas where the number of new cases are rapidly increasing. Certainly New York is one of those, where about 55% of all the new cases are coming from the New York metro area. So these decisions about these decisions will need to be highly tailored in a granular and laser-focused way to ensure we continue to protect those that we know have the most serious illness.
The 15-day period the Coronavirus Task Force has suggested, coming up here quickly, what should we reasonably expect moving forward after that?
Well, I think whatever the Americans do over the next 5 to 6 days, is absolutely critical. And that's why the president and the vice president in every press conference talk about how proud they are of how Americans have responded to the call of how to stop the spread in 15 days. Those items are very specific. It calls on every generation to do their part, from the Generation Z all the way up to our greatest generation. Everybody has a role to play. Everybody is critical in the response. And if Americans really heed those guidances over the next week, we do believe that we can make tremendous progress.
How would you describe the job President Trump is doing behind the scenes and in front of the cameras during these daily briefings that we're seeing? What's been your perspective, Dr. Birx?
He's been so attentive to the scientific literature and the details and the data. And I think his ability to analyze and integrate data that comes out of his long history in business has really been a real benefit during these discussions about medical issues. Because in the end, data is data, and he understands the importance of the granularity. And I think he's been really excited about finding the level of detail that we've been able to now bring over the last few weeks to really understand who's at the greatest risk for severe illness, who will have mild and less and asymptomatic disease, and really calling on every American to do that social distancing, because some people may not know they're actually infected and be unknowingly spreading the virus. And that all comes from the president seeing the data and then really directing these policies and these guidelines that go out to the American people.
All right, Dr. Deborah Birx with the White House Coronavirus Task Force, thank you for your service and for your time.
Thank you.
Well, tonight the Senate has reached a deal on a coronavirus relief plan. The question now is, when will Americans actually see any help? CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson joins us with the story. Abigail, it looks like a lot of Americans will see some money. Do we know how much?
That's right, Jenna. In this bill, taxpayers with incomes up to $75,000 a year are expected to see checks of $1,200 and an additional $500 per child in their families. There's also $350 billion designated for small businesses to help them stay afloat and retain their employees throughout this pandemic. There's $150 billion for state and local governments, $130 billion for hospitals to be able to get additional supplies that they need, $500 billion for corporations, and 4 months of unemployment insurance, as well as other things. This is a massive, unprecedented stimulus bill, but lawmakers are trying to do anything they can to get Americans much needed relief in this crisis.
Yeah, you know, Abby, in the debate process, we saw senators really get into it. There was a ton of passion, a lot of fire. How did both sides finally reach this agreement?
Well, it was not easy, but late or early this morning, I believe around 2:30 in the morning, negotiators from the White House, from Senate Democratic leadership, from Senate Republican leadership, finally came to an agreement on a compromise bill, different terms that they want to see. They're still finishing the draft of that legislation, but they believe they've come up with a bill that will have strong support in the Senate, that will be able to clear the House and be signed by President Trump, because they want to get this done at lightning speed for the Senate. And here's a look at what Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell had to say on the Senate floor this morning about this legislation.
The Senate is going to stand together, act together, and pass this historic relief package today. Struggling Americans are going to go to their mailboxes and find four-figure checks to help with their bills. Why? Because the Senate stepped up.
And as McConnell, he said this bill is not perfect, but as I mentioned before, the Senate has truly worked at unprecedented lightning speed to draft this legislation and are hoping to get it passed as soon as possible.
Hey, Abigail, what criticisms have there been for the bill inside the Senate?
Well, this afternoon, we heard some Republican senators raise a red flag that there possibly is a provision or they said a drafting error in this bill that would cause some people, some employees, more incentive to go on unemployment benefits, and it would give them more money on unemployment than they were making while they're actually working. Now, they say that this incentivizes companies to lay people off or people just to quit their jobs and incentivizes some workers to remain unemployed. So they're asking for a fix to the bill to cap the unemployment benefits at 100% of an individual's income. Now, since the senators have raised this issue, I'm hearing some reports that it was actually intentional because of technical issues and complications with states not having systems in place to be able to track what people's incomes are. So we'll see how this ends up playing out, but all senators that are raising these alarm bells have made it clear that they support this legislation. They want to see it passed, but they also want to make sure that they're not incentivizing people to be on unemployment.
All right, Abigail Robertson, thank you very much. And here now for more, Congressman Ro Khanna of California. Congressman, thank you for joining us. You, along with a group of House Democrats, are calling for a nationwide shelter in place. Talk about what you're hoping to see and what led you to join this call.
Well, I believe in this country, human life is sacred, and we need to do everything we can to protect life. In my county, in Santa Clara County, we went into shelter in place on March 16th, and since then we've only seen a 45% increase in coronavirus cases. In the nation, in the same time frame, there's been a 1,000% increase. So I believe if the country has a shelter in place for 2 weeks, it will give us the opportunity to reset. I understand it will hurt temporarily the economy, but I believe it will save thousands of lives.
Yeah, and your colleagues in the Senate, they've reached a deal on the relief package. From what you've seen so far, what's your take on it?
Well, I'm encouraged. One, I'm encouraged that this country is capable of working in a bipartisan way to solve issues when our back is against the wall. And it's been a long time since we've seen that kind of bipartisan spirit. Obviously, it's not perfect. I mean, everyone has their own views, but the fact that it extends unemployment insurance, that it gives far more unemployment relief to people who know it, need it, and that it's going to send a cash check of at least $1,200 to a lot of Americans who are hurting. I think all of these are positive steps.
Congressman, what can we expect as the House works on this next phase?
Well, we're inclined to be supportive. I mean, there are a few things I wish we had included and maybe we can do in a future bill. One of it is that we need a moratorium on people's rent and mortgages. I mean, if people have worked 10 years, 20 years to be able to afford a house or are paying rent, they shouldn't be kicked out because a few months they aren't able to make those payments. And especially small businesses and restaurants and commercial properties shouldn't have to go under. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to see some more support for businesses that aren't laying people off and are paying a salary. But overall, I think there is a lot of sense of urgency that we have to get something done immediately, and then we can have future bills.
Yeah, definitely a lot of urgency. Well, a couple of congressmen have tested positive for coronavirus. Does that make you nervous at all, Congressman?
Well, I obviously, like any person, am concerned for my elder parents or seniors, for my wife's parents. We have young kids, but we're keeping safe. I mean, the reason I'm not doing this interview from Capitol Hill is I'm trying to work remotely as much as possible, not coming into contact. Look, this is a disease. Prince Charles tested positive. It knows no class. It knows no rank. It knows no race. It's something that affects all of us, and it reminds us all of our humanity, our vulnerability. So I'm taking the same precautions as everyone.
Congressman Ro Khanna of California, we have to leave it there, but thank you. It's good to see you today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Coming up, the push in Washington to get the economy back on track. You're watching CBN's Faith Nation.
Having sex before you're married is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins. Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Watch The Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
Stocks closed up today, marking the first back-to-back days of gains in 6 weeks. The Dow Jones closed up around 482 points. The S&P was up near 30 points. Well, as Congress moves to pass the biggest economic stimulus plan in modern American history, President Trump is pushing to get the economy back on track. He's hoping by Easter. CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us from the North Lawn with a story. Ben?
Well, Jenna, we are hearing reports President Trump is being pushed by advisors and business leaders to boost the economy as job losses mount nationwide. However, members of the coronavirus task force have cautioned against easing guidelines, warning that more testing data is needed. The $2 trillion spending bill, which Abigail was talking about earlier in the show, is designed to offset the crippling economic impact of the pandemic, providing more than $800 billion in support for business, boosting unemployment benefits, and is sending a one-time payment of $1,200 directly to most American taxpayers, $500 per child.
Our country wants to be open. Our people want it to be open, and they're raring to go. And I think it's one of the reasons that we're going to have a tremendous bounce back.
You know, a strong workforce requires strong business. You can't have a job without a business to work for. And the hope here is that the companies that were operating very well at the beginning of the year when the economy was in good shape, we will help them and their employees get through this tough period.
Now, Kudlow says the relief package could actually set the stage for a good economic rebound in the second half of the year, but some economists feel more money may be needed, but are optimistic, hoping to see some good economic growth starting in June. If the bill gets bipartisan support in the House, which it appears it will, the relief package could reach the president's desk by the end of the week. And Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin says Trump will sign it. Jenna?
All right, Ben Kennedy at the White House, thank you. And here now to discuss, CBN's chief political analyst, David Brody. David, your thoughts on this $2 trillion stimulus plan? Who are the winners and the losers here?
Well, let's start with the winners, the American people. I don't think there's any question about this. Look, they need an injection, not just into the economy, but into their own personal pocketbooks, and many businesses. We can go through the list, right? I mean, businesses, banks, everything that's going on in this economy right now. So they're the big winners. Donald Trump's a winner for getting it done. But the losers, however, clearly Nancy Pelosi, who had to kind of basically pull back the House bill that she wanted originally, no minimum wage, not many union protections that they wanted, a host of Green New Deal items. And so, look, for Nancy Pelosi, supposedly the master negotiator, it didn't quite work out this time. A bridge too far.
David, the poll numbers for President Trump, they seem to be getting better and better as this crisis moves along. Gallup has him at his highest approval rating ever since he took office. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think because, as Donald Trump says, the president says we're at war. And anytime you have a war you have a wartime president, and anytime you have a wartime president, usually those approval numbers go up, and I think that's exactly what you're seeing. And look, I think this administration, it started out a bit slow. They seem to have gained momentum and steam, and Mike Pence, daily White House coronavirus briefings, I think, have helped in two ways. One is kind of pitted the media back to the enemy, and I know that's something that Donald Trump loves. But more than that, I think from an approval standpoint, he has shown that he has been out front every day on this, not hiding, if you will, and not just tweeting. And I think that's made a big difference.
All right, David Brody, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thanks, Jenna.
Well, leading a church in the age of coronavirus. Up next, the challenges many pastors are facing.
Yeah, I got
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
On the home front, Tuesday morning at 10:30.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government.
My focus has been trying to really make sure we have the future leaders we need for the bench and the bar and for society generally.
You'll learn from highly credentialed leaders who are current and former judges, distinguished scholars, and ACLJ counsel.
I'm so glad I chose Regent. The relationships here have been amazing. The faculty have been amazing. Not everybody's called to the same thing when they leave law school, but they're called by a God who has a purpose for their lives, and He is going to use that education to make a difference in the world.
Regent will prepare you to be a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer. To start your rewarding law career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July. Apply today.
Well, pastors have a very tough job, and the coronavirus has only made their work harder. The outbreak putting on hold in-person interaction, which also leads to a big concern over finances. CBN News senior correspondent Eric Phillips has more. Eric?
Well, given reports of cases of rapid spread of the disease, many people are worried about, am I going to catch this? And that is why right now it is so important for pastors to play their role in terms of calming the anxious, even if it means doing so electronically.
We are being forced to be creative when it comes to not just worship, but pastoral care, congregational connection.
Dr. Kimberly Ridley, pastor of the 200-member Light Community Church in Richmond, moved their service online last Sunday. I'm going to assume that you have never pastored in a pandemic before.
You are absolutely correct. This is brand new. In some ways, it's great, because the church was never about the building.
But unexpected challenges are growing in this time of social distancing and reducing group size.
We can't go to the hospitals if somebody gets sick. If someone has a situation at their home, you have to be very careful, before you even enter someone's home. But God forbid there is a loss and you have to determine what to do in a case of a funeral. It really is a day-by-day, individual, prayerful decision that has to be made.
And those choices can be questioned, such as when it came to closing the church doors.
And there was debate on, if you're open, then, is that supposed to be an act of faith? If you closed, are you afraid? And regardless of what you do, somebody's going to say, that's not right. you shouldn't be doing that.
Then comes the finances. While parishioners may have tighter budgets because of virus-induced layoffs, church leaders face the same budgetary concerns.
This is the time for the church to really step up and be a support, even in times when the church has a need.
Pastor Ridley says one of the most important things she can do is to remind people to rely on God and love each other like never before.
You have to find some kind of way to still believe that something good is going to come out of this, that we're going to be better after this than we were in the middle of it. But we still have to, in the meantime, extend some grace.
Because of quarantine and isolation, it's also a concern, and pastors may want to consult mental health professionals to help as they try to aid their membership through this crisis. She also says she's regularly collaborating with other pastors and government officials as they all try to figure out how to navigate this new world order. Jenna.
Thanks, Eric. No Olympics, no problem. Still ahead, how these athletes aren't giving up.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government. Ready to become a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer? To start your rewarding career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. Whoa! It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man, come.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes too, and so much more. Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Finally tonight, this year's Summer Olympics have been postponed, but that isn't stopping some U.S. athletes from continuing to work hard and train hard.
I think the dream never dies, and so although you have another year to push, it's just another year to get better and go even harder at it.
That's a good attitude. Well, although the Tokyo Games have been pushed back to 2021, members of the U.S. canoe and kayak team are continuing their training and looking ahead to next year. One kayaker says some athletes feel like the rug has been pulled out from under them. But because of the COVID-19 crisis, he understands why the International Olympic Committee had to postpone the Games until next year. Life certainly on pause for all of us right now. Well, that's going to do it for Faith Nation. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Have a good evening, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.